Okay, hello and welcome again to a new episode of the KewCast. I'm John, and I'm joined remotely again by my good pal Eddie. How you doing, buddy?
I'm all right considering I've come down with a disease.
Which kind of disease?
I got the Rona.
The Rona, you got the Rona.
I was in North Carolina last week. As I mentioned, we were doing our remote cast last week and came home and just was feeling miserable and tested, and sure enough, came out with the coronavirus.
Man, how long has it been since you've had COVID before this?
It's been about a year, I think.
Yeah?
Maybe more.
Okay. Is this one
this
more
is
mild?
actually my third time.
Yikes.
This one has been way more mild, actually.
Okay.
The first two times with COVID and my flu bout earlier this year, I had just like razor blades for sore throats for just days on end, and it was awful.
Yeah.
And this time it's just been tired, had a little bit of coughing, but for the most part, there hasn't been a sore throat, and that's, for me, usually the worst part.
No, that's good.
Okay.
Get well soon, Eddie. You and I did meet face-to-face on the court today and hit a bunch of paddles, but I thought I would forego having us confined in this little box that I call a studio here.
Probably smart, given the lack of ventilation.
Lack of ventilation, and last time you were sick, I caught something nasty. Knocked me out for a couple of weeks.
You're blaming that on me? Okay, all right, fair.
I think we passed stuff back and forth in here. I think I got you sick before that.
Maybe so.
All right, well, we've got a good show, Eddie. We've got some latest news to get caught up on. I'm going to cover this poll that I've had going now for 3 weeks, which is, what's your main paddle? And we got 660 entries, so pretty good sample size there. Actually, a really good sample size. To talk about some numbers, crunching some numbers. And then, boy...
John, this might be my favorite episode of the year.
Why is that?
It's just chock full, cram-packed full of paddles.
Oh, my God. We've got a lot of paddles of the week. That segment lives up to its name this week. I mean, July is bananas for paddle releases, so we're going to be covering a lot of the new releases coming out here in July. And then I think we got some Q&A after that. I think we actually will have time to get to the Q&A. A little bit of a deep dive, not so much a deep dive, but I found something during my dissection of the PaddleTek Bantam GTO-C, and that review is coming out tomorrow, before this podcast will come out. Anyhow, I wanted to chat about my discovery. I don't think anybody else has talked about this, and it applies to all PaddleTek Bantams. So let's jump into it, buddy.
I like it.
All right.
Let's jump in.
Eddie, we've got a little bit of news. Mostly I wanted to talk about a letter sent out by Kevin, the owner of GRUVN, regarding his latest lazr 16HD solid foam paddle. Now, that was PBCOR approved. If you remember, the cruising version of that full foam paddle it failed PBCOR. Now, the issue he's addressing in his email is that the lazr solid foam came in at 0.44 at USAP, and as we know, the USAP PBCOR max is being reduced to 0.43 this November. So technically, the lazr 16HD, and he got confirmation from USAP about this, his lazr 16HD solid foam will eventually be sunset because it's over that 0.43 limit, but it's at 0.44, so it's still legal. It will be sunset on May 1st, 2026 of next year. So that's just over 10 months from now. So he is working on getting this lazr 16HD solid foam paddle passed to 0.43. It'll need a new name. Hopefully it's not a confusing name, but he will eventually get that approved along with a wide body shape and a elongated shape, so the X and S shapes. He also just submitted an updated move-in 16HD foam, and he's waiting on PBCOR results for that. Now, how does
So wait, John, will the 0.44 model be released?
It has been released for pre-order.
It has been released, okay.
And what he's saying is that he's already emailed the customers who have pre-ordered the lazr 16HD solid foam and providing them with two options. Either they keep their current solid foam, which will be tournament legal up until May 1st of next year, and receive a 70%, that's 70% discount on any GRUVN paddle up to that May 1st, 2026. Or the second one would be a full refund if they don't want to keep it. And then, so the thought is you can keep it and order another one for 70% off after it gets 0.43 certified. And what would that be? So 70% off, it would be $53.70. And no codes applied to that after that solid discount. But regardless, you're basically getting a $50 paddle on top of the one you've already ordered. So yeah, he's trying to make it right here. He didn't fully understand, what the 0.44 meant, or there's some miscommunication with USAP about that. So, a couple of solid options for people who are pre-ordering, and he will continue to sell these his current inventory of Laser 16 HDs. If people want to buy them, now you will buy it for the full price plus code 10% off. So I think, what is that? I think it was $180 or $170 before code. So it's one of the cheaper solid foam paddles. And then if you do continue to buy it, if you do buy one of these, you'll get that 70% discount off your next purchase from GRUVN, or a full refund.
Well, if I'm working the formula in my head, John, 10 months is a long time to hold on to one paddle.
Yeah.
And by then, a 0.01 PBCOR difference, maybe not even noticeable.
Right. You're basically getting...
In 10 months, you get a new paddle, and you probably are all the better for it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Anyway, so good stuff from GRUVN. Thanks for the clarification, Kevin. Eddie, we've got a lot of poll results to chat about. So as I mentioned in the intro, 660 people entered the poll and answered a few questions regarding what's your main paddle. So let's jump into this. I put up some charts for you to look at on the show notes. I put these up on the screen also. So the first one was paddle brand. Which brand of paddle are you currently maining? So as I mentioned and teased last week, we have one clear winner, and this is out of our viewership, obviously. So, this is probably gear and paddle enthusiasts, but of those people, 11624 was the clear winner for your main paddle brand. In fact, it's more than double that of the second place winner, which was Yola. That's pretty crazy.
That is shocking. It's not shocking that 11624 is on the list, or even that it's number one, but to be number one by 200% over Yola,
right?
That's pretty surprising.
Huge. So 151 people out of those 660 or whatever are playing with 11624. Now I have a number of other paddle brands on this chart. So what I did is cut it off at 10 or more paddles, 10 or more responses, and there's a whole bunch after this. So second place, like I said, goes to Yola. Third place, Carbon. Fourth place, Honolulu. Just under Honolulu is Bread and Butter. That was pretty surprising to me. I mean, bread and butter is still very relevant, but I haven't done a bread and butter review in a good while. But yeah, they're killing it, right up there with Honolulu in terms of popularity. Next is Vatic. Beyond that is Apes, then PaddleTek, then Proton, then Ronbus, then 6-0. Then Mark is making a pretty big presence in the 10 or more responses category. Mark Pickleball. Then Gearbox below that. Then Franklin. Then Neonic. Then Holbrook. Eddie, any other surprises to you in that grouping?
I'm happy to see Mark there. I think that's well deserved. Not really a surprise, but they've kind of been on the periphery for forever. So to see them on the list is great. I'm a little surprised to see Gearbox so low on the list. I kind of thought they'd be a little bit higher.
Same.
And then Bread and Butter. I mean, what was their last release? The Invader?
Yeah.
So it's been a while for them in terms of recent releases. So
yeah, they're still killing it.
I guess they've got a loyal following.
Yeah, and it's interesting too. Braden did a similar poll on Pickleball Effect last month, I think. But these are different than his, and it's enlightening to me in that I thought we shared pretty much the same audience, me, him, and Chris in particular. But for example, his 6.0 was I think third place or second place even.
Oh, wow.
So he was surprised by that, and there were a lot of double black diamond users in his group who answered the poll. 6.0, seems about where it should be based on the last time they released a paddle, the last time I did a review for our audience. But yeah, just interesting that it would vary so much from Braden's audience.
If we don't see something soon from 6.0, they're going to fall off the list entirely.
Oh, we're seeing something soon for sure.
I hope so.
I can't talk about exactly what it is, but yeah, if you watched the China trip that I had to miss because of my injury, there's a lot of news coming out of that trip and teasers of things to come. But
all right.
Yes. All right. Some notable mentions. So not on this chart you're seeing here, but brands with 5 or more responses include Friday Pickleball. Congrats to them. Mm-hmm. Only recently did we start talking about Friday on this podcast. Volair, Chorus is also up there, as well as Engage, Selkirk, and Spartus. Surprises me a little bit that Selkirk is so low, although in some ways that also makes sense because they haven't really made any, performance paddles that the really enthusiastic paddle nerds / paddle enthusiasts have been into, short of their most recent release. And I think we'll see this number grow after their SOK era and then their next release that I know some things about, can't talk about also.
I hate when you do that. Just piques my interest.
Well, you were invited, Eddie. You couldn't come, though. I mean, you had daughter's graduation or something.
Right. Yeah. Something, insignificant compared to teasers.
Okay, let's move on, Eddie, to paddle model. So within the paddle companies, let's look at the most popular paddles. So not surprisingly, now that we know 11624 was so dominant, the Vapor Power takes the number one spot.
Gotta be the Vapor.
Yeah.
100%.
The Carbon TruFoam Genesis 2 shape takes the number 2 spot, which I like to see, both in terms of the shape as well as Carbon coming in at number 2, even though they weren't number 2 on the brands list. The Yola Perseus 4 coming in at 3. The Apes Pulse V coming in at 4. That's pretty outstanding for Apes. I mean, what were they on our list? They were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Halfway down the pack, yeah.
Yep, they were number 7, but their Pulse V is our number 4 spot for paddle model. Then the Scorpius 4, then the PaddleTek ESQ-C. That's pretty high up there. I love it also that we're seeing some mostly wide bodies in this. So we've got one hybrid so far. 1, 2, 3, 4 wide bodies and one elongated in this top 6 list. Mm-hmm. Beyond the ESQ-C, we've got the Proton Flamingo. Then we've got the Vatic Saga Flash.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. Then we've got the Honolulu J2K, which is a little surprising. I thought that might be a little higher on the list, but I think we'll see a resurgence of Honolulu now that they've released their all-foam cores. We've got the Bread and Butter Invader. Next is the Bread and Butter Shogun. Interesting. Shogun's still in this top 15 list or whatever, however many this is. Then the Double Black Diamond, still a relevant paddle from 6.0. Then the J2K Plus, then the Mach 2 Forza. I love seeing that in here. Then we've got the Pegasus Power. Then the Prism Flash, then the Pulse S. Yeah, so what I did was I just took, this is not the exhaustive list, but I took all paddles that had 8 or more responses for this chart and showed them. Any surprises or commentary on this list, Eddie?
So again, the 11624, almost double the number 2 paddle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just shocking how, I mean, we know it's good. Maybe it's the Johnkew factor, meaning the Vapor Power, but that's still a surprise, man.
Yeah. I mean, it's blowing everybody else out of the water, including big brands, So.
Yeah. That we don't see a Franklin on here is a bit of a surprise, but I'm sure it's not far down the list.
Yeah, I imagine it's rising in popularity too. What would be cool is to do this quarterly and just see the trends every few months.
Yeah, and see the ones like the Shogun that just continue to hang on, and the 6-0 double black diamond.
Yep, they have staying power. All right, let's. The next question on the poll was, what thickness paddle are you using? So the next chart shows on the x-axis from thickest 20 millimeters on the left all the way over to the thinnest at 8 millimeters on the right. And you can see a clear spike at 16 millimeters, which is clearly the most popular thickness. More than double. It might have, more than double of the next popular thicknesses, which is 14. And I did some lumping in here, so I grouped the 14.3 millimeter PaddleTeks into 14 millimeter and the 12.7 into 13 millimeter. But yeah, we've got a clear, bipolar curve here with the main peak at 16 and the secondary peak at 14. And there's some subsidiary, I'd say, almost a tie between 15 mil and 13 mil. And then way off in the fringes, you get some thinner paddles and some thicker beyond that.
So basically 16 and 14 with a 2.5 times lead to the 16 mil.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think if we had done this a year ago that the breakout would be similar?
I think 16 would have been even more popular last year.
I agree with that.
Yeah, because I think we're seeing, I mean, you and I should speak for myself, but I think you're on the same page as me. I never used to like anything less than 16 millimeter. It just felt like a board and did not feel good. No forgiveness, poor sweet spot. But this year, I think we've seen plenty of 14s released that I am very happy with. I like the balance of lightweight with a good sweet spot. Not as good, I'd say, as the 16s, but still very comparable. And yeah, I think it's been a lot of good 14 millimeter releases this year.
Yeah. Hey, John, before we move on, can you, let's go back up to that paddle chart. How many of those are like full foam? Any of them?
Oh, so you mean the paddle model?
The paddle model, right.
So we got the TruFoam Genesis.
I think that might be the only one
on the list. Yeah, that's the only one. So people are, they're catching up with the releases. And I think what we'll see by the end of this year is most of these paddles are going to be all foam because there are so many being released this month in July, and there will be more and more throughout the rest of the year. And many of them play, incredibly.
They're very good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Let's move on to the next question. And basically, I was asking people to rate their satisfaction of their current paddle, which I knew would be skewed to I'm very satisfied because they are maining the paddle. But I just thought it'd be kind of a cool question. So
I read this as current Pickleball paddle co-host for a podcast.
Well, yeah, outstanding, Eddie. I mean, we already knew this, right?
100%.
But why aren't they more perfect? That's what I want to know.
That's a good question.
So it goes from perfect at 10 down to very dissatisfied at 1. And we got a peak, basically a tie between 8 and 9, which are excellent and outstanding, respectively. We've got almost, it looks like about 8% of people said perfect, which that's surprising. It would take a lot for me to say that my paddle is perfect. What I wasn't able to do is I could eventually do it, but by looking at the user ID, but I wasn't able to tie their answers to specific paddles yet.
Oh, that was going to be my question.
Yeah, it would take some more drilling down into the data. Maybe I'll do that for the newsletter this week. So we got a lot of outstanding and excellent, quite a few very satisfied, and then straight on down. I want to know who's very dissatisfied with their main paddle. I love it. Maybe they got it as a present and they just don't want to spend the money on a new one.
I sense a pivot table in your future, John.
Oh, this is already lots of pivots in this table.
So we can get to this information that we want.
Yeah, for sure. All right. And then this next one I think is pretty cool. So I did a word cloud on my next question, which was, what's on your wish list for the next paddle? And it's a very open-ended question. It could be like, okay, I want more power, or it could be, I want this specific paddle. So right away, the largest words you see in this word cloud are power and spin. You know? So I think that's most people's sentiment. They want more power and spin. I thought there'd be a lot more talk of control. Like, yes, I want a very powerful paddle with a lot of control. Control's in here for sure, and it occurs a couple times. Now, one thing that I think is inflating the power word here is that it includes people saying, like, I want more power in my paddle, and it also includes people saying, I want a 11624 power vapor, right? So it's including all mentions of the word power here. So what else do we have here? We've got a lot of interest in Honolulu and their all foam cores. So the J2NF in particular is high up on this word cloud. Probably that might even be number one if you split off all the variants of that, or lumped all the variants of that into one. We've got a lot of interest in the Vapor, 11624 Vapor Alpha Pro. We've got lower swing weight makes this cut. So I basically filtered it minimum of 5 mentions for these words. 14 mil is...
So you're telling me the words wild thing showed up 5 times?
Yeah. They did.
Explain that one to me.
Somebody listening to that song. Okay.
I could see 1 time, maybe twice, but 5 is really interesting.
Nothing was also mentioned 5 times. Literally the word nothing. Durability makes the list. Power pop. Interesting. So this is kind of a fun little experiment here.
Spin is on there, but it doesn't show up very dramatically. Well, that's kind of interesting.
Well, there's a smaller spin, but there's also that big spin right in the middle, right?
Oh, I was looking at the high spin down at the bottom there.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Messed up on that. Touch, I see on there. Foam is on there, but not very prominent. But it's kind of spread out all over the place. It'd be nice to ask this question: is what characteristics do you want to see in your next paddle?
Yeah.
Versus what paddle?
Yeah.
Because it's too confusing seeing all these words jumbled up together.
I agree. I'll do that next time. All right.
What do you think bit refers to?
I don't know. A bit more power, maybe.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, there's some funny ones in here when you just read them by themselves.
All right.
Somebody wants less. Less of something.
Oh my goodness,
that's
too funny. Well, let's have a discussion about Wild Thing on the next podcast.
Okay, we can do a deep dive into Wild Thing. All right, Eddie, let's jump into this, or else we're never going to finish this week's podcast because we've got a lot of paddles to talk about in your favorite segment, Paddles of the Week.
Man, not only is this a great episode because there's a lot of paddles, but man, there's so many good paddles this week. I don't know how much better paddles can get. We'll see, but man, they are getting really good.
Oh, yeah. There's so many good paddles coming out this month alone. I mean, this is definitely the peak so far this year in terms of the quantity of paddles coming out, but also just the quality of those paddles and the performance perks for these paddles is just at an all-time high. It's not like we've got a few just meh paddles and one really good one.
No way.
There are a bunch of really good ones being released right now.
High quality, high performance. It's really getting hard to make separations between the highest level paddles because they're just so good in all dimensions.
For sure. All right, well, let's start with the Body Helix Flik F1 TerraCore. So there's one that's been PBCOR approved, and that is their elongated. And you and I have been hitting around with these prototypes for a good while now, and we were both, thank you, very excited about this one because the prototypes take great, but they failed PBCOR. And finally, one was PBCOR 0.43 approved. It was, according to my knowledge, right at the upper limit there is 0.43, so there's no danger of it being delisted or sunset down the road. Eddie, I'll let you talk about this. You've got quite a bit of experience playing with these. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this recently certified paddle is not my favorite shape. This is their elongated model. I was playing with their standard shape, long handle, fairly large face paddle for quite some time, and love that paddle. And I like this one just as much. It hits like a butter truck. Super
Butter truck.
It's very powerful, but not in a very stiff and harsh way. It's probably the butteriest feeling paddle of the group today, and maybe of all time. It just feels that good.
I sense that Fred will be making a butter truck edition of the Flik F1.
It's hard to believe that this paddle passes PBCOR because it hits pretty hard.
I agree with you there, for sure. Let's take a look at the X-ray while you're talking about this, because it's pretty illuminating. This was one of the best looking X-rays that I've had taken.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, super high quality. You can actually see each one of the individual foam beads from the expanded polypropylene in here. And what you're seeing in the center, if it looks familiar, it's very reminiscent of the carbon TruFoam Genesis, in that we do have holes that go all the way through the foam. I did verify that. It's not just indentations, but there are holes going through. And also you can see the ghosting of the two fiberglass sheets right in the middle of the paddle, also similar to the TruFoam Genesis. And what we're also seeing in this is edge foam. So this is expanded polypropylene in the center, edge foam along the edges going down into the handle, making this a thermoformed paddle. So basically this is it's a thermoformed TruFoam Genesis. And I'm sure the formulation of the foam is not exactly the same, but that's exactly how I'd explain how it plays also. So take a TruFoam Genesis, thermoform it, and that's what you're getting here with the TerraCore. I think you're right. It feels dwelly, like it has a lot of dwell time. It rips spin. It's got some great texture on here. I mean, it's really, really rough.
And that texture gives you a lot of dip on the ball.
Yeah, for sure. And there's a pretty oversized sweet spot. The TruFoam Genesis is great all around. It doesn't have the largest sweet spot. And as you would imagine, take that TruFoam Genesis and thermoform it. You're going to expand the sweet spot a bit, and that's what you're getting here too. And I agree with you, Eddie. The elongated, I think it hits fine. I would prefer to hit with the wide body or a hybrid shape, which is what are you holding there?
Here's that wide body, kind of a standard shape, I guess, but it's got a square face. But this has really an amazing sweet spot. I mean, the elongated certified model has an excellent sweet spot, but this one is even better, especially with the weight setup that I have here on the side. This series of paddles, I think Body Helix is not really well known as a paddle company, but I think that's about to change here very shortly.
Yep, I agree. The performance of this paddle is pretty nuts. I mean, you said you find it hard to believe it passed PBCOR. I'm right there with you. We'll talk about all these paddles we're talking about today at the end. We're going to come back and rank them according to firepower, and then also like forgiveness and feel. So I won't spoil that yet, but this is absolutely in the elite tier of the power category for paddles, and the ball really comes off this with a lot of velocity. And combine that with, a good sweet spot and kind of a plusher, more dwell time feel.
Yes.
I think it's going to be a popular paddle for sure.
If you like butter, like I like butter.
I mean, I can't believe it's not butter. So I do have more information about it. So the layup is 4 layers on each side. So you have unidirectional carbon fiber on the top 3 and then the bottom layer of fiberglass. However, thinking it has 4 layers, I'm like, okay, that's going to add weight to it. But they all come in lightweight. So this elongated paddle, the static weight I got for it was under 8 ounces, 7.9 ounces. Swing weight I measured at 113. which for an elongated paddle is very low. Twist weight 6.0 for this, so about average for an elongated paddle. And clearly, with this much, there's a lot of room to modify this one with perimeter weighting because it is so lightweight stock. So you could boost that twist weight up for sure. Balance point is pretty low, also at 23.8. Price.
So John, is that layer of fiberglass on top of the square of fiberglass that sits kind of in the middle of the face?
Now, yeah, I didn't think to verify that with Fred. So it might be the case that there are 3 layers of unidirectional carbon fiber, and he's counting that square of fiberglass as the 4th fiberglass layer.
Okay.
So I'll verify that. Good question. The price is $190 before code, so coming in low for all foam paddles. Also, I asked him about, because I think all of their paddles right now have a 3-month warranty, so a 90-day warranty, which is on the low side. I asked him, and he said that they will be adjusting that warranty up for TerraCore paddles. So I think he trusts that these will be more durable.
I have had quite a few hours on my prototype version, and it has no problems whatsoever.
Okay. Yeah, excited about this one. I can't wait to. And by the way, you and I were out on the courts today. I was on my peg leg. we got a lot of comments from people, so I'm able to get a sense of paddles. And you're very patient with me, Eddie. Receiving my serves and doing like slinky drills where I'm going up and back from the net and dropping. But yeah,
John, I thought we had a deal though. Maybe it's not in writing. Maybe it's just an understanding. But I thought we had a deal that you weren't going to ace me when you're on a peg leg.
That one ace was a lucky one. I was like, I'm going to hit my peg leg. I'm going to move my paddle a little bit. And it just dipped right over the net. So I won't be able to replicate that.
You can still bring it, John. I'm impressed.
All right. Well, let's move on, Eddie, to the Vatic. So Vatic Pro is throwing down the gauntlet with a $100, well, it's actually $110 all foam paddle that will be coming out here in July. I did not get the exact launch date, but I'm sure it's out there. But $110 before code, so basically dropping it down to $100 even with code and a 1-year warranty. So that's crazy. I think I heard Chris and Isaac talking about this, and they're like, man, they could have come in at like why not make it 150? That's still lower than anybody else. And then you get a code with that, or 140 would still be a phenomenal price for an all foam paddle. But I think they were just like, you know what? We're going to be the lowest price here. And in addition to that, we'll talk about the way it plays, but I love the aesthetic changes they made to their graphics. So this is the bloom shape, and they've taken off some of the design on the edge guard, and they've matted out that black edge guard. And I'm not usually a fan of an all black paddle, so with the black handle, black edge guard, black face, but this looks sharp. Simple Vatic Pro on the sides, and yeah, I don't know if you can see it, but that edge guard is not shiny at all. It's all matte. It has a nice, smooth, kind of sanded feel to it. And yeah, I think they did a good job with the graphics for sure.
I've always liked, Vatic's very simple, kind of classic pickleball branding.
Yeah.
It works for me. It always has.
Yeah. Let's look at the X-ray first. So very reminiscent of the body Helix. So again, we've got expanded polypropylene foam, and then we've got holes in it, which look to go all the way through the core as well. It's not as tight of a pattern in the center as the body Helix or the TruFoam Genesis, but there are some holes. What is curious to me is that the X-ray is turning up like a very fine-looking grid pattern. Can you see that in yours, Eddie?
I can, yeah.
And I don't know if that's definitely not the beads of the foam. They're too regular. I don't know if it's something in the face layup. Maybe it's like a layer of woven fiberglass on the bottom or something.
They're almost like very minute miniature ridges.
Yeah.
Is what that looks like.
Yeah, it almost looks like a peel ply. But it's too big for a peel ply. And I've never picked up a peel ply on the X-ray before, which leads me to believe it's some kind of cloth in the layup. So maybe like a fiberglass cloth.
And honeycomb in the handle, just the handle.
Yeah, unlike the body Helix or the TruFoam Genesis. So just the handle has honeycomb, and there's edge foam, so it is also thermoformed. All right, so let's talk about what we felt out on the court with these. First, let me give you kind of the weights. They are a little bit on the heavy side. So for the Flash, I got a static weight of 8.1, swing weight of 117. I didn't want to get up with my cast leg. So here's the Flash. Swing weight of, I noticed that on the court, it felt a little sluggish compared to other average swing weights for a hybrid shape. So 117, 6.5 twist weight for this. The Bloom comes in at 8.3 ounces stock or static, swing weight of 116. Again, a little high for a wide body. Twist weight's massive on this, 7.2. And then the V7 comes in at 8.3 stock, static, 124 swing weight. So really beefy swing weight on the V7 and then a 6.3 twist weight. Did you notice them being a little heavier than other paddles we're hitting today?
Not really, no.
Okay. We only played with the Flash today, so I haven't hit the other two. Eddie, give me your thoughts on how you felt like that Flash played.
It definitely has power. It has even more pop, I would say. But that pop comes with quite a bit of paddle face stiffness. It's a very responsive face. It does not give the impression of a ton of dwell time, but it does give the impression of a very poppy paddle. Mm-hmm. I didn't really care for the stiffness of it. It almost feels like a full fiberglass face through and through, which is not my favorite for feel, but I get it. If you're looking for power, that's probably the way to do it. But I don't know. The stiffness was a bit harsh feeling to me.
Yeah. 100% agree. Everything you said. Of all the paddles we had today, this was the stiffest by far. Absolutely, it's a deadly paddle in terms of firepower. Definitely tilted toward the pop end of the spectrum, but even baseline drives come off hot. I think this would be hard to control if you weren't used to that level of pop. Especially coming through the transition zone, trying to reset balls. For me, this would be tough to dial in. And yeah, maybe what we are seeing in the X-ray is that fiberglass woven cloth. I don't have information on the face layup yet. I'll ask Daryl if he can provide that, but I imagine there's got to be some fiberglass in here somewhere. And I agree with you, Eddie, that it does feel like it's on the surface. I don't think that's the case, but if it's reminiscent of the chorus fires to me in terms of that extreme pop.
Oh yeah, that's a great comparison.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And there's some vibration when you hit it for sure. However, the chorus fires are very, very lightweight. These have a lot more weight behind them, which is weird to me that they do feel so stiff and poppy for being on the heavy side, not uncontrollably heavy, but normally that weight kind of smooths out that pop feel, gives it a little more plow through. It makes it feel just a little softer, but man, not so on these. There's definitely a stiff feel.
And they're 16s, right, John?
Yeah, they're all 16s. But yeah, I mean, I think for $100, it's a steal. Even especially if you don't mind the stiff feel and the ridiculous pop. There's something skewed heavily toward the pop end of the spectrum. If that is your jam, then my gosh, what a great deal these are.
100% agree with that. For me, though, it's not my favorite of Vatic's offering. I thought the Saga Flash matched my game and my interests a lot better.
Yeah. If I put a gun to my head, had to choose among the Vatic options, I would probably go Saga too. Obviously, I need more time with this, and I want to hit with a wide body shape, in particular the Bloom. That might even out some of the bad vibes we got with bad vibrations we got with the Flash shape. So, yeah, excellent price range for this. So here we are already. This is like the fifth full foam core that's been approved and released, and it's already down to $100, and that's Vatic for you, right?
Do you think, John, that full foam cores are easier and cheaper to produce than their polypropylene cousins?
I don't think so, not yet. I don't think definitely not
Okay.
cheaper in terms of materials, but I think as the mass manufacturing becomes more streamlined in China, I know that not all of these are made in China. That actually they are. TruFoam Genesis was developed in the U.S., but it's manufactured in China. Anyhow, I think as that becomes streamlined, it'll become much more affordable. Oh, and by the way, I mentioned on last week's podcast that kind of the method of pouring beads into the mold, and that's not always going to be the case. And in fact, the one I was talking about when I mentioned pouring beads into the mold does not use that method. So I was talking about the Honolulu J2 NF, and you can see even from the X-ray, as I was talking about it, the EVA edge foam and those notches is separated a little bit from the interior. So it's clear that they expanded the foam somewhere in blocks and then cut out those saddle notches and then pieced them together inside the mold in an already expanded state. So that was my misunderstanding originally. So I'd like to know. I'd love to go. Maybe when I go to China, I think I'm going to go in August, take Dale up on his offer to visit the 6.0 factory. Maybe I'll be able to see some of this happening in the factories. All right, Eddie, let's move on to the next paddle on the list. So we've briefly mentioned the Pickleball Apes Harmony series before, but we've got the production models in our hands now, and we went out and hit with them today. So I'll grab these off the wall. All right, so I just scratched the surface a little bit. I'll be able to buff that out. It'll buff right out, Eddie. So one of the things they've changed, not the graphics, but the edge guards. So they have two-tone edge guards. And I'm actually a fan of this. I don't like it when people mess around with colors too much on edge guards. The radiant edge guards are played out, I'd say. But this looks sharp. It's just a two-tone edge guard, so you have black on one side and mostly blue surrounding it. And not only that, it's not painted. So another issue I think that drives me nuts on edge guards is when you get a painting or a coating and it scuffs easily when you hit it on the court. And especially on something two-tone like this, if the underlying edge guard was, white or something light and you see all these chips, it would just look tacky after a little bit. So what they've done is fused two separate edge guards. So you have a black edge guard going from here to here, and you can feel like a little separation between the blue edge guard on the rest of the paddle. So I'm sure that's extra labor costs involved. So I'm glad that Apes is going the extra mile to do some things just for aesthetic reasons. I think it looks sharp. What do you think of the looks, Eddie?
So you think it is purely aesthetic, John? There's no change in density or weight or anything like that would, signify a difference?
I don't think so. I think it's just aesthetic, because it would make sense to only have high density over on one side or vice versa, So that's my thought, but maybe I'll ask Ivan.
I'm so on the aesthetic. It doesn't really do anything for me. I wouldn't buy it because of that.
Okay.
It's not attractive to me, but it's not off-putting either.
All right. Well, we got three shapes. So we have the elongated X, we've got the hybrid shape S, and the wide body V. And let's look at the X-ray. So X-rayed looks like the X, they're elongated. A lot going on here. This is pretty cool. Yeah. So we have
a lot of foam.
Polypropylene core, and we do have what looks like EVA foam in the corners only, but it's pretty thick. So this is not it's not a floating core, so the foam doesn't separate the core from the handle or totally surround it. So in places the polypropylene comes all the way out to the traditionally thermoformed edge foam, and in places you have a large intrusion of these EVA foam wedges, and those are in the four corners of the paddle. Yeah, if you look at the polypropylene only, Eddie, it kind of looks like one of those Rorschach tests, where you're kind of trying to figure out these abstract shapes. I'm not I don't know. Looks like kind of
I
like
see two elephants having intercourse.
Okay. That's right where your mind goes immediately.
But I've seen that in every Rorschach ever, so.
I can't beat that, so I'm not even going to try to guess. So we've got standard size polypropylene diameter for the cell size. So it's like 8 millimeter cell size. Like I said, it is thermoform, so I'm seeing edge foam along the edge of the paddle, although I don't see it in the handle. Are you see it? I do see it in the handle after all. And then there's some dense objects at 9 and 3, which I take to be interior perimeter weighting, probably lead of some sort or some high density polymer. So a lot going on in this paddle.
It looks cool. I like it.
Yeah.
It's pretty surprising, actually. It's not at all what I thought it might be.
Right. And it's unlike any other paddle. I like it that Apes is innovating, you know. They're not just iterating and borrowing stuff from other people. This is unlike anything we've seen out there, you know. Pretty cool.
It looks like a simpler construction than the Pulse as well, which should lead to enhanced durability.
Yeah. I think that was definitely one of their goals. They didn't like how the Pulse changed. I mean, people love the Pulse, as we can see in our poll results from today, and they're going to continue to sell the Pulse. But I think they wanted to provide an option that had some great performance, but did not change in any significant way from the time when you first hit it to, so reducing break-in.
I'm really curious to hear the stats on this one because those weights ought to bolster the twist weight.
Yeah, and I was surprised. So I've got the weights here. So on the Pulse V, so they're wide body, it's a static weight of 8.0 ounces, so very standard. Swing weight of 107, which is very manageable.
Wow.
Yeah, twist weight of 7.1. So small swing weight, massive twist weight.
That is amazing.
Yeah, the S shape, so their hybrid shape is 7.98 ounces, so right there at 8 also. Swing weight of 112, which is very manageable. A twist weight of 6.2. And then their elongated shape, right at 8 ounces also. Swing weight of 119, so below average. And then twist weight of 6.1, so right at average for that shape. So really good weight distribution. I didn't get the balance points, but I imagine it's going to be either average or below average for the balance points, given what I'm seeing in the X-ray.
Yeah, they hit great today, or at least the one model that we played with.
Mm-hmm.
Very solid feeling, very firm. Not firm in the way that the Vatic is in terms of stiffness, but just very kind of dense feeling, I would say. It feels a lot like the Arma does in terms of ball striking. Just a very sort of confident, just a very solid feeling paddle. None of the hollowness of the Pulse series.
Right.
So if you like that kind of low pitched boinking sensation, this isn't really that. This is more of a solid feeling paddle, I would say.
Yeah, I do feel like it feels like a Gen 3 paddle. It doesn't feel like as stiff as just a regular thermoform polypropylene paddle. So I'm getting some Gen 3 vibes, but I agree it definitely feels denser than the Pulse series. And these production models, by the way, I think you and I both agree they hit a lot harder than what we remember the prototypes of these hitting. I think we classified the prototypes as like right in the middle of all court or maybe even leading control. These are definitely not that. I'd put these, low in the power category, which I think was their goal. So a lot more power than I remember. I feel like the response is very predictable. And I would compare it also to the Franklin C45 Dynasty, where you get this linear, very predictable response of the ball hitting this paddle, which, you're not going to get any small swings and suddenly the ball flies 10 feet over the baseline. It's just like, if you make a mistake, it's your fault, not the paddles with this. That's the vibe I'm getting.
Okay. That's an interesting comparison. I agree with you on sort of the predictability of the paddle. The feel is a lot different than the C45.
Yeah. I didn't mean like the C45 is very light. and less dense, I'd say, than this. But yeah, the predictability, that linear predictability is what I was comparing it to.
Yeah, I would love to play around with that V shape to just stack it with weight and just see how stable we can make that paddle. Because this paddle, I would say, has the elongated version we played with has an average size sweet spot. But I think that there is some ability to add weight. There's plenty of room in the swing weight window to do that.
Yeah. I feel like for its twist weight, I think it hits above its twist weight, the elongated that we played with today. I felt very comfortable hitting it with off-center shots. But yeah, I want to try the V shape and try some weight modification on all these and see where it gets us.
Right on. Good stuff from Apes.
Yeah.
What's next on the list, John?
Alrighty, we've got another Ronbus Ripple shape, or another shape in general from Ronbus. So Dong sent me the Ronbus Ripple V2 R5 shape. So this one's interesting. It may look like a hybrid, but it's actually a wide body with the very long handle and the arrow curve top. So the measurements on this are 16 inches long by 8 inches wide. And, this is, I don't have my tape measure and I don't have the measurements from Ronbus yet, but it feels like a 5.5 inch handle with the taper that allows you to extend your grip up. I wouldn't have any issues getting two hands on this even without a finger on the back of the paddle. So yeah, an interesting choice. I would have never seen this coming from Ronbus, this particular shape. What do you think of it, Eddie?
I love the shape. I think it's maybe that and the 4 are my two favorites from Ronbus.
Yeah, the 2 is still my favorite, but I'm open for this one taking over my favorite spot for Ronbus. Static weight on this is right at 8.0. Another thing about this one is, how the Ripple V2s were all a little heavy, right? They did all this reinforcement down the middle to allow it to pass PBCOR, and that caused swing weights to be above average, shall we say. But the static weight of this, 8.0 ounces, swing weight, 115, which is on the high side, high-ish for a wide body. However, 115 is pretty manageable. Twist weight of 6.1. So looking at the X-ray, you can see it's the exact same guts as the last iteration of the Ripple, the V2 Ripple. So we've got the EVA foam channels separated by carbon fiber, forming these ribs to provide the structural support, and then some reinforcement along those 3 columns right down the middle of the paddle.
Do you think it plays any different than the other models you've tried?
It's definitely in the Ripple V2 family. Plays very similar that way. I need a little more time with it to really compare it. It's going to have less swing weight than its R2 stepbrother, even though it's wide body, it's got the arrow curve top, which is reducing that swing weight a little bit. And the handle is cutting into something about the bottom. I think it's the taper itself. It's not as flaring of a taper, so you're losing some of this twist weight down below, and overall swing weight as well. So it's just a more maneuverable wide body paddle. What I'm not dialed into yet is whether or not shortening the face so much by removing some of the corner mass reduces the sweet spot, makes it flatter so that it's harder to use than the V2. But I didn't have any issues with it today in terms of finding the sweet spot.
No, same. And for me, I think that swing weight difference makes all the difference. I was able to get around on balls that might have been like pushing a little bit because my hands were a little slower with the previous model. So it's, for me, a welcome change to see a little bit of a decrease by just a few points in swing weight. And otherwise, it's got that pop and power that's very, very sort of characteristic of the Ronbus.
Yeah, definitely in the top tier power category. So Dong actually did respond to me as we started the podcast here. So he wrote that the R5 shape is planned for public release on July 11th. Okay, so just around the corner here. It's a wide body with a curved top designed to reduce static and swing weight compared to the R2's standard wide body shape. To further reduce the static weight and allow for more weight distribution, he's currently working on an improved fire core for the Ripple 3. Hopefully I can mention this. I'm just reading it straight off the email. He says he's in the factory now for a few more weeks to continue R&Ding it for the I don't know if I can say this. I'll leave it up for your imagination what he's working on. The rest of it. I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying this. He says regarding the Ripple V2, they haven't found any durability issues, and they've received only positive feedback from customers. So that was the big caveat in my review and others is, is it going to be durable or is it going to break him? So far, he sounds like he is getting good positive feedback.
Man, I love that he and the company just never rest. I mean, there's no let up in trying different things, innovating, new materials, new way to put things together. And it's just, I love that in pickleball. And not every company does that.
For sure. And this is a totally unique shape. We have not seen a wide body thing close to this, right? So, good on him.
Yep.
All right. Next paddle. And I did get permission to talk about this at not a very detailed level. So kind of first impressions, nothing too in-depth. But the Carbon TruFoam Genesis 4 shape. So Carbon has been teasing that they are going to be releasing a hybrid shape paddle, and now it will be coming. I can announce, and we may be the first podcast to announce the launch date because we're not supposed to announce it until noon tomorrow, which is when I plan on publishing. Actually, it'll be 2 days out when I publish this because I'm publishing the PaddleTek review tomorrow. Regardless, the launch date, it will be July 23rd for this. And this is what it looks like. So, Eddie, if you remember my interview with Garrett and Kyle from Carbon, when the first TruFoam Genesis was released, they mentioned that they were working on a hybrid shape with a narrow curved top.
I remember.
Yeah. And this
Here it is.
And it does seem to have a slight flare. I wouldn't call it, it doesn't look exactly like the Black Diamond series, but it's in that same family for sure. Long handle, hybrid shaped paddle. It looks good. I like the aesthetics of it too.
It looks great, and it's quickly going to become a favorite.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know if this is too detailed. I don't think so. I can tell the weight. So this comes in at a static weight of 8.0 ounces. Mine came in at a swing weight of 107, which is very good. That was one of the issues or one of the complaints, I think, from some people on the original TFG 1, 2, and 3. They were saying the swing weight was a little too high. This is a very manageable swing weight at 107 and a decent twist weight too at 6.4. So I think they've done, I don't know if they've done anything, but maybe it's just the shape. And if you look at the X-ray, you can see the X-ray it has the same guts as the original TruFoam Genesis. So it's got the...
I don't know, John. They must have done something other than the shape because something has transformed in this paddle. I love the way this hybrid shape plays. It feels more consistent. It's certainly easier to swing than the other models. It's a winner. I love the way this thing hits.
Yeah, when you and I hit with it today, I felt like it was playing better for me than their other shapes, and that might just be an issue of this more appealing shape to me. It ticks all the boxes for me. I don't know. I need more time with it and hit it side by side with the TFG2 that I had so much experience with to say for sure. But you can see in the X-ray, it's got the cavities, the grid system of circles in the center, circular holes, and then the elongated holes around that. And then the same fiberglass sheets right in the center. Although it looks like maybe something new in the bottom of the handle there. Something's glowing bright. Ooh. Maybe some handle weighting to drop that balance point down.
Interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, I thought it hit great today. sweet spot felt good. It felt very poppy, which is typical for the TruFoam Genesis paddles, but maybe even poppier than the other paddles are providing. You know what I mean?
I didn't pick up a ton of poppiness or power with this paddle compared to the other ones that we played with today. I would put it on kind of the low end of what we saw today, but still, compared to the whole universe of paddles, yeah, absolutely, it's going to be what, low end power? Would you say? Yep.
Yeah, I'd put it at the same level as the other TruFoam Genesis paddles, but I was just commenting that I didn't. I just felt more pop in that overall firepower spectrum today than what I remembered. But as I mentioned, I need to get it out side by side with the original TruFoam Genesis paddles to say for sure.
Honestly, I was never comfortable with the swing weight of the other paddles, and this one, it just ticks the boxes. It fixes those issues for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Solid offering. I think this will by far be their most popular shape for this line. So good on Carbon. All right. We've got yet another paddle here to talk about. We got two more in our lineup today, Eddie. So I wanted to talk about the 11624 Alpha Power models again, because we now have the production models. What we were talking about before in the podcast were the pre-production models, and nothing significant has changed. Well, for you, something very significant has changed.
Hey, look at that edge guard. What color is it, John?
Oh, I mean, the edge guard itself, it looks white to me. Is it
it's
not?
white.
Okay.
Exactly.
I mean, sometimes I see a very light teal or green as white too, but how about the emblem here? Is that just gray? Shades of gray?
I can't see what yours...
Oh.
Gray and green. Gray and that, the
Okay.
11624 teal.
Okay. Well, I like it too. I like it better than the gradient edge guard for the aesthetics. And we hit it today mostly to compare it firepower-wise to the other paddles. But I do have some updated thoughts on it, because last time I hit with this, I talked about how, which I still feel this is the case, that it definitely skews less toward pop and more toward power than the original powers do. But I put the overall firepower as lower. Today, I didn't feel that way. I felt like there's ample firepower and very comparable overall to the original powers. And that's my main has been the Vapor Power now for a good while. I do think it's just skewed differently. So if you like less pop and more power, this one is much better. And in fact, if I stuck with the Vapor after my injury, I think I will be switching to this one now, because I think it feels better to me to play with. It's got that springier response on bigger swings, but it's more controllable with shorter swings. So it just feels good to hit. I don't know if I'm going to be continuing maining. There's just so many good options right now. Who knows what I'll be maining when I get out of my cast or when I'm back on the court for real in August.
I do like the feeling of increased dwell time of this paddle over the regular Vapor Power. Mm-hmm. We saw that in the kind of the prototype version, and that's held true in production here. So I think that's a positive thing, because I never mained the Vapor Power because I never liked that feeling of stiffness.
Yeah. Speaking of stiffness, but in a good way, that they switched over to PU pallets. They don't have the spongy EVA foam handles anymore. So good on 11624. Just continuing to improve.
It sounds different than the pre-production version. The model we played with today it almost had like a little bit of that Pickleball Apes pulse kind of hollowness.
All right.
That I didn't pick up in the prototype version, but I'm feeling it here. It doesn't change the dwell or the feel, but the sound is a little bit different.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it might be related to the handle. Also, the layup is different, so it's CCF, carbon fiberglass, as opposed to CFC for the previous powers. I think that's partly why it's feeling less poppy, more controllable. Also, it's the 10 mil wide cell polypropylene in the core, which is different. And the price for these will be $199 before code, and then they're expanding their warranty to a full year, which I think is smart.
So, John, we didn't play with the Huarache, but what were your thoughts on the differences between the Pegasus and the Vapor? Did you hit with the Pegasus today?
Not today, but
okay.
Yeah, I mean, the Pegasus is another great paddle. It's just I feel like this is so close twist weight wise to the Pegasus that I'm not missing any twist weight and sweet spot here, but I'm gaining a little bit of extra reach and a little bit of extra offensiveness with the added leverage you're getting with a longer paddle. So for that reason, I didn't main the Pegasus. Not to say that I couldn't play with it and be perfectly happy with it.
Yeah, I do like the extra leverage. I like where the sweet spot sits on this, on the Vapor, a little bit more than the Pegasus. And John, you know, I don't think you need any excuses to be more offensive. I think you're plenty offensive as it is.
Yeah, just my presence on the court is offensive
Exactly.
to some people. But I like that they're going to a 1-year warranty. You know, these are some of the most durable paddles, Gen 3 paddles on the market. But yeah, good offerings from 11624. Like you said, I think this is going to be a welcome addition, an iterative improvement for most people who didn't like the stiffer feel or who were okay with the stiffer feel but would prefer a softer, more forgiving. I'd call this a little bit more forgiving of a paddle, especially when it comes to the softer, touchy stuff within the same firepower realm as the originals.
Agree.
All right, Eddie, should we move on to our last paddle of the day?
Revolin.
Yeah, so the Revolin Torch. I've had this for a while. I haven't found an opportunity to talk about it yet, but this one is the wide body with an elongated handle. So this 16 by 8 inches length by width with a 5.75 inch handle and a 13 millimeter thickness. Swing weight on this is super low, 103. Twist weight of 5.7, or 5.8. So, you know, very, very maneuverable paddle. $225 before code. One of the different things about this is that they're using basalt fiber. So actually real basalt fiber, unidirectional basalt fiber in the layup, and there's also a layer of fiberglass in it. It is a peel ply texture on this. And it's also large cell polypropylene and made in the USA. So if you look at the X-ray, Eddie, it's very reminiscent of the PaddleTek ESQC and ALWC with a longer handle. So it's Gen 1 large cell polypropylene. The cells even have kind of that shear force deformity that we see in the PaddleTeks, but clearly not crushed. It's a Gen 1 paddle. Not that it can't happen in Gen 1 paddles, but these look like healthy cells, but for the kind of lateral movement of them. And something's going on in the handle. I don't know if that's weighting, kind of those brighter dots we're seeing in the handle. Are these? I don't think it makes sense to put ball bearings in there, but maybe they are. Maybe they're using the old PaddleTek method of dropping some ball bearings in there, but using it in the handle to drop the balance point. Not sure. But
I was thinking they were just pins holding the what do you call those things? Pallets in place.
Yeah. Maybe that's the case. Maybe you have to dissect one of these. So anyway, yeah, I've always been, I've liked Revolin's business model. That they tried to make some of these, you know, more eco-friendly paddles before, and they were using like hemp in the layup instead of, you know, plastics. So I like it that they're conscious of that. And I think this is by far their best paddle to date. It plays pretty well. You know, we got a chance to hit with today. We're comparing it with some pretty amazing paddles. So, you know, I don't think it stacks up necessarily to the most elite in terms of performance, but I think it's a pretty solid paddle. I would say that I felt the low twist weight. You know, it's pretty twisty in the hands. I think that could absolutely be shored up. There's a lot of room for edge weighting on this because you have such a low swing weight of 103. Do you have a similar thoughts, Eddie?
I would love to try it, John, with about 8 grams per side. Just load that thing up. As we were just taking our places on the court today, I was bouncing the ball off the face. I'm like, this feels really weird. It's almost like the 007 in terms of like just a strange vibration coming through the handle. And that kind of carried over into gameplay as well. There was some harshness to it. I felt the lack of twist weight just as you did. Smaller sweet spot, and I think some perimeter weighting would help broaden that out, but also just, I think, make a better feeling paddle.
Yeah. Yeah. What I did notice about it was it has excellent spin. I want to get some RPMs on this. I feel like this was the spinniest paddle we played with today. And that's saying something because we had some really spinny paddles. And I want to examine this under a microscope to see, is it regular peel ply or are they putting some kind of basalt chips or something and the epoxy of the peel ply? Something about it just felt like it was gripping the heck out of the ball.
I think the paddle looks great. And I will say, on center sweet spot hits, this was one of the best feeling paddles that we played with today. I mean, pull the butter truck up because when it hits well, it hits great and it feels good.
Yeah, it does have that satisfying kind of PaddleTek Bantam feel a bit when you hit the ball dead center. But yeah, it suffers from some of the smaller sweet spot issues that most Gen 1 paddles do. I do want to put some perimeter weighting on. I think it's, ripe for perimeter weighting for sure. Shore up that twist weight a bit and see if it helps out. I'm sure it will help out, but the question is how much will it help out? Will it reduce the dead spot up top that you typically get with Gen 1 paddles? You know, and this wasn't even the last paddle we were talking about today, Eddie.
Okay, what else?
We're talking about the PaddleTek GTO-C, which is, a good segue from this because it's very similar construction, Gen 1, large cell polypropylene. And by the time this podcast comes out, my review of this will come out too. And it is $250 before code with a lifetime warranty. So, this, by now, most people associate PaddleTek with durability. Rarely are there any QC or breakage issues with PaddleTeks. And this one's pretty cool because it's a hybrid shape. So it's actually closer to a wide body than it is to an elongated. It's similar to and it has a similar shape also to the Vapor in the 11624 lineup. So it measures 16.2 inches long by 7.7 inches wide with a long 5.5 inch handle. And I think that shape alone in a Bantam is a lot of fun. I think it's going to appeal to a lot of people. Same as other Bantam paddles, it comes in those two thicknesses, 12.7, 14.3. And they weighted these up, Eddie, quite a bit. Not quite a bit, but more than their other options in the Bantam lineup. So one thing that I think is confusing, I haven't heard this said on any other reviews yet, and I think there's some confusion on Discord, is like, why is there so much variability in the static weight and swing weight of these paddles? Well, it's intentional, and in fact, you can choose your static weight on the PaddleTek website as you're buying these paddles. So you can choose between 7.7 ounces static up to 8.1 ounces. So that's 7.7 to 8.1, and obviously the swing weight and twist weights will go up or down accordingly with that static weight. So my paddles had a range of swing weight from 114 to 121. So 114 is about average for a hybrid shaped paddle, as this is, and that goes up to 121, which is way above average. So if you want a lighter paddle, you can certainly get that 7.7 ounce one when you order it.
So, John, is that by design, that's something they've built into how they've decided to manufacture these paddles, or is just the manufacturing variability such that they really don't know what's coming off the line, but they know it's different, and so they'll just offer that as a feature in what they're selling?
No, it's all very intentional. So they have a weight goal. I talked to them about this yesterday, actually. They have a weight goal, and they add the perimeter weighting until they get to that weight goal. So you'll see variability. So let's say that they wanted to make it an 8.0 ounce paddle. So let's let's look at the X-ray here. This is the 12.7, and it has 4 ball bearings in each side. So let's say that they wanted to make this one a little bit heavier. They would have added 5 in each side to meet that static weight goal. And in fact, I didn't quite understand that before I dissected mine. That's why I brought this up in conversation with them, because I was looking at this X-ray and I grabbed another 12.7 millimeter paddle, and I thought it'd be exactly the same. So the first thing I did was take it over, stuck it in a vise, cut off the edge guard just over those ball bearings, and I pulled out 4 ball bearings from each side. And then I brought it over to this table and I started sawing it. And I could not, thankfully I was using a hand saw and not a power saw, but I couldn't get past one point, and I realized that there was still another ball bearing in each side. So there's a total of 5 in each side. So I had to get those out before I was able to finish the section, which I'll show next in the deep dive. But yeah, so I gave you the swing weight variability, so 114 up to 121. Twist weight varies from 6.5 up to 7.5. So very generous twist weights, as you would imagine, sticking ball bearings in the. They do have very high balance points, and you can see they put the ball bearings up high. It's not at 9 and 3 or even lower, down at 8 and 4. It's way up there at, what would that be, 10 and 2, right?
Even higher, maybe.
Yeah. So that's by design too. They said they wanted this to have kind of a personality of its own and not be exactly what you'd expect a hybrid shaped Bantam to feel like. And I think they succeeded in that sense. It's in the Bantam family. It plays very similar and a lot like what you would expect this shape to play like if you've played with the ALWC wide body, the SQC wide body, or the TKO-C elongated. This does fall in the middle, but it's got a bit of whip that I didn't expect due to that high balance point, and a little more offensive capability on bigger swings and less. No, it has just as much pop as the other PaddleTeks, but just a little bit more in terms of bigger swings, bigger hits. You know what I mean? So you played with it.
I had this on the court a couple of days ago, John, and I was expecting a ALW or an ESQC, just in a different shape. I was expecting the exact same play characteristics, and was very pleasantly surprised by the broadening of the sweet spot over those other paddles, the increase in I think, pop and power, and that familiar dead spot that unfortunately we've come to know about the PaddleTeks is gone. I was not able to find any dead spots on this paddle, in particular at the top here. So does shape make a difference? Absolutely. But what they're doing with weight distribution is making a huge difference as well. Yeah,
that may have been intentional too, putting the weights up higher to help with that dead spot up top. I still feel the dead spot, but it's definitely a lot smaller than the other Bantam offerings. So, yeah, I think it's a solid offering from PaddleTek. You know, I feel like if you love PaddleTeks for their durability, then it's worth it. You know, it's $250 before code, and there's I think a 90-day window when codes work, so you can get that down to, $225 with the 10%. And with the lifetime warranty, that appeals to a lot of people. I do think it's becoming a little more niche to want this paddle in today's market, where you can get the same level of firepower with a lot more forgiving paddle. Regardless, there are a lot of PaddleTek lovers out there, as shown by our poll today, right? PaddleTek is still very much relevant.
Yeah, and if you're one of those people that in the poll you were using a PaddleTek and were satisfied with it, but not outstanding or perfect, this may be the paddle to get you one up on the scale.
Yeah, for sure. And in the deep dive, I'm going to talk about the dissected paddle you can see here, but we'll pause on that and first talk about, let's do our firepower and forgiveness ratings, Eddie. And if you could throw in, I know we didn't hit with the GTO-C today, but if you can kind of think about it right now and throw it into your rankings here, I'll do the same. So why don't you go first? Let's take all the paddles we just talked about and order them first by firepower, starting. Why don't we start? Yeah, it doesn't matter. You're going to stop at top. Start at top or bottom. Your choice.
Well, I like going from the bottom to the top. So Let's go with the Revolin at the bottom of today's offerings for firepower.
Okay.
Followed by the carbon TruFoam and the Apes. Again, no slouches for power, but in this group, second from the bottom. 11624 Pro Power comes in next. The Vatic beating that one out by just a smidge. And at the top of my firepower rankings are the Ronbus and the Body Helix. Throwing in the PaddleTek into the mix, I'm going to put that in the middle as well, right there with 11624.
Okay. So
How about you, John?
Mine is almost exactly the same. I just have a couple of mine are flipped compared to yours. So starting at the bottom, Revolin Torch. The next one up for me, which is different than yours, is the 11624 Alpha Power. And I could be convinced to make it a tie with the Carbon TruFoam Genesis 4 and the Apes Harmony. Those are all in the same firepower level to me, but to me, the TFG and the Harmony felt just a tad bit more powerful. Actually, what I might do is drop the Harmony and tie that with the 11624 Alpha Power and then leave the Carbon TruFoam Genesis 4 just above that. Regardless, those three paddles all hit very similar. Next above that, I'd put the PaddleTek GTO-C. Above that, the Vatic VCore, and then same tie at the top for me. I could not tell any difference between the incredible firepower of the Ronbus V2 Ripple and the Body Helix Flik F1. Okay, Eddie, I'm going to give you my answer, but I want yours too. If you had a gun to your head and you had to choose which of these two was the most powerful, the Ripple or the Flik F1, I'd have to choose the Flik F1. Honestly, I think it edges out the Ripple in firepower.
I would agree with you. I don't have a gun to my head, but I can make that call today.
Okay. All right. Forgiveness ratings. Do you want me to go first on this one?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, from bottom to top, least to most forgiving, and we'll throw in kind of feel with this, like favorable feel. I'd go Revolin Torch on the bottom, PaddleTek GTO-C above that, a tie at third for Ronbus Ripple and the Vatic VCore, a tie again for second for the Body Helix Flik F1 and Carbon TruFoam Genesis, and then a tie again at the top for number one between the Apes Harmony and the 11624 Alpha Power.
Wow, we are, as we were with firepower, very tightly aligned, which is surprising. Sometimes we kind of veer off into different directions on these things. But at the bottom of mine is the Revolin, followed by the Vatic, and I'm going to put the PaddleTek down there with the Vatic as well. In the middle of the pack, the Ronbus. Edging out the Ronbus was a tie between the Body Helix and the Pickleball Apes. Both outstanding feeling paddle. I love the way they feel. But just edged out very slightly by the Pro Power and the Carbon TruFoam Genesis. So honestly, I could probably make a four-way tie at the top there, but there's guns to my head, so I've got to make choices.
Okay. So gun to your head, what's your number one?
Oh, today my number one's going to be the Carbon TruFoam.
Okay.
Which I would not have said about the 1 and the 2, but this hybrid shape is pretty special.
Yeah. I honestly can't. It's going to be meaningless to give you a number one because I feel like it's a total tie for me between the Apes Harmony and 11624 Alpha Power. But I'd have to give the edge, I suppose, to the Alpha Power.
Yeah.
Right now.
Okay.
I reserve the right to change my mind on that.
It's a very tight grouping, though, any way you look at it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. No, that was fun. Plenty of paddle talk. Let's get into a deep dive. I'll make this short since we're already hour and a half in. My goodness. So when I was dissecting the PaddleTek Bantam GTO-C, I noticed when I got down to the sandwich, look how flexible this thing is. I mean, I've never felt such
a sheet of silicone.
Flexi paddle, right? So I cut it down the middle like a sandwich. You can see it's curling up on itself. Now, for comparison, I've got the Selkirk SOK era, and that is, you can hear it like crunching and breaking as I'm, so there's very little flex. Now, part of this is obviously the thermoforming process. There is a band of carbon fiber around the edge, which is making it stiff and providing some structure there. But even without that band, I've never seen such a floppy paddle. Now, part of that is also the wide cell polypropylene. So the 10 millimeter polypropylene in there. But beyond that, I'm like, what is causing this? So I did a cross-section cut, and I'll show the microscopic image of this. And, normally I'm looking for 3 layers, and I could not find 3 surface layers in this layup. And I looked and I looked and I cut more, and I sanded here and I peeled off there. And there are only 2 layers in this layup. There is a unidirectional carbon fiber on top, and then you see that wavy band of white underneath that. That is a bidirectional fiberglass weave. Now, I knew that they combined carbon fiber and fiberglass in the PaddleTek Bantam layup. I did not realize that they only had 2 layers. That layer you see, or the globular stuff below the fiberglass, is the polymer from the polypropylene core. So there might be like a little, see that little black thin sheet probably underneath the fiberglass? That's probably like a lamp, not part of the layup, but more like adhesive sheet that's gluing the fiberglass to the polypropylene. But regardless, that kind of blew my mind, and it made sense. Okay, that's part of the reason why you're getting so much flexibility in the face layer, and it's probably it's probably part of the reason why the PaddleTek Bantams have such a unique feel. A lot of people love, and when you hit that Bantam just right on the sweet spot with the hard hit, you get that loud noise, and you also get kind of this satisfying response from the paddle. And I think part of that satisfying response is due to the fact that there's a thin surface layup. Yes, there is fiberglass, which stiffens it up, provides more firepower, but it's also flexible. You're getting some dwell in addition to the 10 millimeter polypropylene. Ooh. So for a Gen 1 paddle, you're getting more dwell and more of that springy feel, which I think everything kind of comes together. But as far as I know, nobody else has really pointed this out. I did verify with PaddleTek that that's what's going on, and it has been going on with the newer PaddleTeks, since they upgraded last year. But I don't think anybody else has kind of caught on until now. And all of the kind of the PaddleTek, influenced paddles that we've seen, like the Saga, yes, they're using carbon fiber and a fiberglass weave, but they're using at least 3 layers in the surface layup. I'm playing with, should we put the fiberglass in the middle or on the bottom? But no, this is just 2 layers. So I just found this really interesting.
John, is it equally flexible in the other direction? Like if you were to...
Yeah,
okay,
probably even more so, because that carbon fiber is unidirectional and it goes north to south on the paddle.
Right. That was my question.
Most of its firmness is going to be on this axis, but still, given that it's just 1 layer, it's not doing much. And then, it brings up durability concerns, but we know that PaddleTeks are extremely durable. And the fact that they're using a bidirectional fiberglass weave under that unidirectional carbon fiber weave provides enough structural support, I suppose. What is curious to me is how this passes deflection, because you only have 2 surface layers and then you have a soft, spongy, wide cell polypropylene underneath that. Clearly it does, because it's been tested at both agencies and approved, at least I think it's the ALWC is approved at both UPAA and USAP. Regardless, they pass deflection. I'm surprised that they do, though, because there's such a thin surface layer and a squishy core underneath that.
Was there ever a time, John, when paddles, like the early carbon fiber models, were just a single layer of carbon fiber and that's all that was?
I think so. I don't know for sure, but I think that was the case with like the early graphite layers, early graphite. Now, one unidirectional wouldn't work, but maybe it was like a composite layer. I think I remember when I dissected the original Franklin Ben Johns Max Grip, I think there's only 1 layer of like composite fiberglass. It's not a unidirectional layer. It's just like this kind of white layer. But yeah, so there we go. Something new.
Interesting that it is as durable as it is.
Yeah, for sure. And it might, like I said, be part of the reason why PaddleTeks have that certain feel that nobody's been able to replicate, because they're putting more face layers on. Not that it's a bad thing or a good thing, to go either way, but it's just different.
Very cool.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to Q&A, shall we?
How about if we just do one question? Because we're already at almost 100 minutes here, John.
Okay, let's do one
This
question.
one's from Pickleball Panda, and I think you answered some of this in the comments section of YouTube, but let's just do it on live here for the show. And that is there a metric that measures plush feeling? I love having a big sweet spot, high twist weight, but is there any way to know what paddles are better for resetting and drops? And is there a metric that can be tied to that?
I wish it was that easy. And you and I have talked about this before. I mean, it's kind of the holy grail, right? That image, the heat map of the sweet spot on the paddle, right? Could you actually map it out on the paddle face and then compare that in terms of area to other paddles and find the paddles with the biggest sweet spot objectively? And no, it's not that easy because there are various things that come into play with sweet spot. So there's, kind of the performative part of sweet spot, and that's how the ball comes off, the rebound velocity of the ball across the face of the paddle. And that's certainly possible to measure, although it's not as easy as you would expect, because let's say that, I have the PBCOR cannon out here, I have the paddle clamp. As long as you're hitting on the center axis of that paddle, you're good. But as soon as you move off the center axis, there's twisting involved, and it just kills the outbound velocity. Regardless, let's say that we clamp the paddle to a wall, right, on all four sides so that, you could hit it across the face. It's conceivable that you could shoot the paddle with the ball cannon and get the outbound velocity or a rough coefficient of restitution across the paddle face and map it out that way. However, that's not exactly what sweet spot is. And I'd say there's something even way more important for the way we perceive sweet spot than the actual ball response off the paddle. And that is the vibration nodes on the paddle. And Eddie, you've seen me tap on a paddle hung from a string with the drum mallet, and we've done that twice on the podcast. And there's a fundamental vibration frequency that every paddle has. It's different between paddles, but when you tap on the paddle, like close to the throat of the paddle, it's vibrating and it's making this tone. You can hear when it's hung from a string, because when you hold it from the handle with your hand, it kills that vibration because it's going into your hand. However, when you get to the sweet spot of the paddle, that tone goes away when you're tapping on it. And that's where it feels best to hit the paddle, even if that spot is not where the paddle returns the most energy. And in some cases, it's not. A lot of times it does correlate. Usually it's about 4 inches from the top. But in the case of the original Ronbus Ripple beta versions, it was way down at 7 inches from the top, which is where the paddle returned the most velocity, versus where it felt best to hit, which was at 4 inches. So you're hitting it where it felt best to hit was returning less energy than where, it didn't feel good to hit. So that is, to me, the fundamental vibration node is what most people perceive as sweet spot. But there are other things that are going to come into play, obviously, including twist weight. If the paddle twists too much in your hand, it kills the ball velocity. And it sends vibrations into your hand. So that combination between ball velocity, response off the face, and vibrations, I think is what we perceive as the sweet spot.
Awesome. Hey, do you have a poll for next week?
No, we do not.
All right. Well, we'll put that one on pause for a week and revisit next week.
Yep. All right, Eddie. Here we are again, over an hour and a half into the podcast. We just can't help ourselves.
Great episode, John. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Eddie. And get well. You already seem like you're feeling better, but kick that COVID. And next time we'll meet up in my office, in my studio.
That sounds perfect.